From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Claire Harvey. It's Tuesday, May 13, 2025. Volodymyr Zelensky is setting out for Turkey to await Vladimir Putin as the United States attempts to broker the first direct talks between the leaders of Ukraine and Russia. That's as world leaders, including Anthony Albanese, pack their bags for Rome for the Pope's inauguration. Michelle Rowland is Australia's new Attorney-General, Tanya Plibersek has been demoted, and Labor rebel Ed Husic is on the backbench. As the re-elected Labor government heads for 94 seats, Anthony Albanese has flexed his new muscle. The National Party has re-elected David Littleproud as leader, defeating firebrand Matt Canavan. And this morning, the Liberal Party will choose a new leader of their own and seek to chart a way out of the wilderness. Today, Canberra's brutal power dynamics and who's coming out on top. Anthony Albanese is heading for 94 or maybe even 95 seats in the House of Representatives. And that means the Prime Minister has the power to do exactly what he wants.
He's got a massive mandate, massive authority, given those results.
That's Jeff Chambers, the Australian's chief political correspondent.
And the way that the Labor machine works is that it's the factions who decide who is on the list of candidates for cabinet and ministry, and the Prime Minister then gets to decide who he appoints to which portfolio.
Albanese has kept his closest leadership team intact. Richard Marles, Penny Wong, Jim Chalmers, Katie Gallagher and Don Farrell all keep their jobs. The biggest promotion is Michelle Rowland, the new Attorney-General, who's replacing sacked Minister Mark Dreyfus.
Michelle Rowland holds the Western Sydney seat of Greenway, and in the first term of government, she was the Communications Minister, and she's a member of the once more powerful New South Wales right faction. So when the decision came down as to who would have to give up a spot, Michelle Rowland, being the only female cabinet member of that New South Wales right faction, was always safe. So she moves up into the Attorney-General's portfolio. But an interesting machinery of government change, which will be made clear on Tuesday, is that those very controversial alterations made under Mark Dreyfus's watch, where security agencies like ASIO and AFP were shifted out of Home Affairs into Attorney Generals, there is now going to be a shift back to where it was. So Tony Burke, very powerful ally of the Prime Minister, takes on Home Affairs, but a much more beefed up Home Affairs. And you could probably argue that Michelle Rowland takes on an Attorney-General's portfolio that it isn't as powerful as it was under Mark Dreyfus, but still a very, very important role.
There was a horrendously awkward moment in this election campaign, dubbed the air kiss of death, when Senior Minister Tanya Plibersek approached the PM for a hug and he brushed her off with a handshake. At the time, Plibersek tried to make a joke of it on Sunrise.
So that's on me. I should have done the elbow bump, I reckon.
You two still getting along?
Yeah, of course.
Plibersek and Albanese are both in the New South Wales left, but they've been rivals over the years. On Monday, when he announced the ministry, Albanese revealed Plibersek is still in cabinet, but has been moved to social services. Journalists' first questions were all about Plibersek, and the Prime Minister sounded defensive.
Do you see Tanya Plibersek having that role until we next go to the election?
I'm just announcing it today, and you're asking me, are people moving on? This is the ministry that I'm announcing today. I hope it continues for 3 years across the board.
I think everyone is viewing that as a demotion. I don't remember the last time social services sat on its own. I think Anthony Albanese gave it away a little bit when he talked about Murray Watt, who's a very close left faction ally and known in Labor circles as Mr. Fix-It. And he described the environment portfolio as one of the most senior in his government and one of the most critical portfolios. So you could look at that and think Tanya Plibersek couldn't land the sweet suite of nature-positive reforms. There was some criticisms about her handling of the salmon farming issues in Tasmania. The other criticism of Tanya Plibersek was that if you look at what Tony Burke and Chris Bowen did in that first term of government, is they really maximised that election victory by pushing through a lot of their IR and climate change reforms. And there was some criticisms internally that Tanya Plibersek had left the key pillars of the nature positive planks of reform until too late. I'm sure she would argue differently in terms of what the government's priorities were, but I think that decision will very much be seen as Anthony Albanese once again shafting a very long-time left faction rival.
Yeah, is the greatest crime to have just been Anthony Albanese's rival?
Oh, look, I don't think it's helped at all. The two of them have known each other for a long time. They've both been in Parliament for about 25 years. Tanya was the deputy leader to Bill Shorten, another great rival of Anthony Albanese's. And in that last term of government, we saw Bill Shorten move on to take a senior role at the University of Canberra. And I think everyone who watches politics closely here wouldn't be overwhelmingly surprised if at some point during this term Tanya Plibersek may move on out of politics.
Plibersek herself says she's happy.
Allocation of portfolios, 100% an issue for the PM.
We already knew Albanese would demote ministers Ed Husic and Mark Dreyfus, the government's most senior Muslim and Jewish representatives, respectively. Husic dropped the mic on the way out, telling the ABC on Sunday he was being punished for speaking up about Gaza.
You can't celebrate diversity and then expect it to sit in a corner silent.
And blaming Deputy Prime Minister Richard Marles.
I think when people look at a Deputy Prime Minister, they expect to see a statesman, not a factional assassin. You know, we've obviously got to be able to avoid these type of episodes. I think the factional grubbiness, there are better ways,
Husic claims he fell on his sword to save other members of the New South Wales right faction because the election results meant the right lost a spot.
I did not want to put my colleagues through a national ballot. And again, I just did it in the interest of stability.
When asked if he fought for Husic and Dreyfus, Albanese was blunt.
Look, we have a process in the Labor Party caucus. You've been watching it for some time.
Albanese could have made one or both of them special envoys, but decided to leave them on the backbench.
I think some people probably feel more sympathy for Mark Dreyfus in the fact that I think he's around 68, almost 70 years of age, that he probably thought he had one more go in him. And if it had been made clear to him that he wasn't going to get endorsed for the ministry, he may well not have run. But the flip side of that is he probably should have been across that himself. So there is some assumptions that Mark Dreyfus may move on from politics during this term and we might see a by-election in the seat of Isaacs. And with such a huge majority, these types of by-elections matter not as much for Anthony Albanese. Ed Husic's a different case. He came out very aggressively. He's not happy. He's making his feelings felt really strongly, very publicly. And I've always thought of Labor, if you sort of keep your mouth shut, show a bit of respect, maintain a bit of omerta, that at some point down the line you'll get looked after. But you put your head above the parapet, you might not get the spoils. But it'll be really interesting because Ed Husic is a very outspoken type of character and he won't sit there quietly on the backbenches.
Coming up, who'll lead the National and Liberal parties? Jeff, the Nationals have re-elected their leader, David Littleproud, rejecting the candidacy of Matt Canavan, who's a bit of a firebrand. What does that mean for the future of the National Party?
Yeah, so I've spoken to a lot of Nationals MPs and senators, and Matt Canavan put himself forward without really thinking that he could win the vote, but just really wanted that discussion and debate post-election. And the Nationals Party is unique in the fact that after every single election cycle, they automatically open up the leadership for a vote. and quite often it's not contested. But after that last election, David Littleproud rolled Barnaby Joyce, and this time Matt Canavan put his hand up for it. But what I'm hearing is that it's a long way to go, 3 years. They want to see what the Liberals do. There's a lot of discontentment in that room. Compared to 2022, they've got 3 less bodies. Jacinta Price has obviously defected to the Liberal Party. Perrin Davey, the Deputy Leader, has lost her New South Wales Senate spot. And Andrew Gee, the member for Clare, who famously defected in the last term over his position on The Voice, he's managed to win his seat. On a lot of KPIs, David Littleproud has fallen short, and I don't think that necessarily it's going to be smooth sailing for him towards the next election.
The Liberal Party meets this morning to elect a new leader of their own. Jeff, what should we be expecting from that meeting?
Yeah, so my mail is that the vote will be very tight. It could come down to a couple of votes. And, you know, that party room is so depleted. So it's sitting in the 50s. That magic number will be around that 27, 28, and they're very split down the middle. You've got the former deputy leader in Susan Lee, and you've got the opposition Treasury spokesman in Angus Taylor. And for some of the younger rising star Liberal types like Andrew Hastie or Zoe McKenzie, they've decided that this isn't the time for them, and that's probably the right call. So really Angus and Susan, whoever gets up, are really seen as stopgap intermediary figures whose job will be to rebuild the structures of the Liberal Party, which is a massive rebuild. It's been put to me that Susan Layes has a nose ahead, but the problem is there's a handful of senators who will vote for Susan Ley, whose term expires in June 30. I think for stability's sake, the Liberals have got a fair way to go.
Jeff Chambers is The Australian's chief political correspondent. You can read our unrivalled coverage of federal politics 24/7 at theaustralian.com.au.